Hi everyone, this is Attorney Andre. Now, unless you've been living under a rock, you know that President Donald Trump was indicted and convicted on 34 counts of falsifying business records. Now, I just want to make clear that this is exactly what's wrong with the jury system because I think the jury got it wrong. And as an attorney that frequently does jury trials, I'll tell you, juries get it wrong a lot. Now, whether I've won cases and whether I've lost cases, I've won more than I've lost. Even the cases that I won, there are many times that I disagree with the jury, and I probably would have done things differently if I had been a judge. Now, a lot of the times when I say a lot of times, I mean probably 1 out of 8 cases the jury gets it fundamentally wrong. And the more high stakes the case, the more likely the jury is to get it wrong. Now, let's take a look at what the jury found, what the prosecution in the Donald Trump case was trying to prove, and how things shook out. Now, in front of me, and I'm going to post this on so you guys can see it, and I'll blow this up. You have falsifying business records. This is a sheet from the Supreme Court of the state of New York. You can see the judge is Juan Merchan. You see the indictment number. You have the date, and then you have number of count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and it goes on to 34. And it's falsifying business records in the first degree. They're all falsifying business records in the first degree. And a lot of these business records are essentially payment vouchers or checks. And if you take a look at them, and I'll link it so everyone could see it. I don't know if anyone has been seeing it. I don't know if you've been watching the news or if they've been showing this because I don't watch the news too much. But a lot of these things are checks for $35,000. There's a couple of checks for even less than that. Maybe there's a couple for a little bit more. But most of them were for $35,000, the vast majority of them. So we're not talking about huge numbers here. We're not talking about $7 million checks. We're not talking about a Ponzi scheme here. We're not talking about any of that. Now, what was the prosecution trying to do? If you remember what the prosecution was trying to do, they weren't trying to build this as a document case, which this is a document case. They were trying to say, look how bad Donald Trump is. He paid off this lady X amount of dollars, this quote-unquote porn star, Stormy Daniels. He tried to get newspapers or the National Enquirer to not publish negative reports for him, and he paid for that, this kind of pay-to-play scheme. And by the way, all of these things are legal. All of these things are allowed. You're allowed to pay someone to keep them quiet. You're allowed to pay someone so they don't publish a report. You're allowed to do all of these things. And that's why if you take a look at what the actual counts are in the prosecutor's complaint, it's for falsifying business records. So it's nothing about paying someone off. It's nothing about keeping someone quiet. It's nothing about extortion. It's nothing about any of those things. It's simply a paper case. And for that paper case, the prosecution had to show that he acted with knowledge. And they have to show that he acted with knowledge for every single business record. There was 34 of them. Did they prove that? Beyond and to the exclusion, because it's a criminal case, beyond and to the exclusion of every single reasonable doubt. And I would say that they didn't. I would say that they didn't because they didn't have the witnesses to do it. And all of their witnesses, the vast majority of their witnesses, were there to paint former President Trump in a bad way. They were not there for the purposes of establishing a fraudulent scheme or establish falsification of a business record, which is what the prosecution ultimately needed to prove, which they didn't prove. Now, what do we have now? We have this terrible precedent-setting verdict where you have a former United States president indicted on document charges, convicted on document charges, and a prosecution that got that conviction based on how they painted the former president. So what is he to do? Well, he's got a couple of avenues. He's got to wait for sentencing, first of all, and sentencing will happen, I believe, next month. And the judge will impose a sentence. It doesn't have to be prison. The judge can issue a fine. There are multiple things that this judge can do. But regardless of it, you still have a conviction. What could he do? Well, he can file an appeal. And he would file an appeal based on two things. Number one, the jury got it fundamentally wrong. There was no evidence beyond and to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt that he committed 34 acts of falsification of business records. There is just no proof of that. The other thing he can do is that the judge got it wrong based on a couple of things. Which evidence he let in, which evidence he excluded, which evidence what he showed the jury, what instructions did he give the jury. The other things that he can do is what testimony was allowed in, And then one of the bigger things is venue. Is the proper venue New York as opposed to another venue? Would another venue be more prejudicial or less prejudicial? Would it give President Trump a fair shake to be, for him to have his case in front of truly a jury of his peers? And then I guess the counter argument is that you can say that everything happened in New York and all of these transactions occurred in New York, but the reality is that a lot of the times venue is laid exactly where the individual resides, the defendant resides, and the defendant in this case resides in Florida. So perhaps Florida would be the proper venue, especially if there's an ongoing criminal case already in Florida. You already have the possibility of either joining that case or filing a subsequent or substitution case, or a subsequent case most likely. So you have a situation now where you have a jury, and I'm telling you that the jury system, it's probably one of the best systems in the world, but it's fundamentally flawed. It is fundamentally flawed. The avenue for appeal that President or former President Trump has is limited, but it's still there. But I do think, and this is someone that has tried many cases, that the jury got it wrong. They couldn't. The prosecution could not show what they were trying to show. And we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with sentencing, and we'll see what happens at the appeal. Really, this case can go either way. This case can go any way because it is so unprecedented. This has never happened in the history of the United States. And for some people, it is truly a terrifying moment because you have a situation where a prosecutor can, if they can do this with a president or a former president, imagine what they can do to someone else. Stay tuned. Let me know what you think. Like, comment, subscribe. I wish I could be more happy about this, but I'm not. And talk to you later.